What's up, guys? Listen, I'm gonna do something a little different for this week's message. I'm going on a little trip, West Rock Ridge State Park. Gonna learn about another Old Testament character who trusted God and relied on his faith during extremely difficult times. So bear with me. I'm new to this editing video thing, but I think it's gonna be good. See you in a second. All right, so the Old Testament character we're going to look at today is Gideon. Gideon. You may remember I taught him a few years back. Incredible story. So we're going to be looking at Judges, chapter 6 through 8. So starting in chapter 6, it says, "The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites were so cruel that the Israelites made hiding places for themselves in the mountains, caves, and strongholds." You may notice where I am right now. I'll get to that in a minute. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, mortars from the Midian, Amalek, and people of the east would attack Israel, camping in the land and destroying crops as far away as Gaza. They left the Israelites with nothing to eat, taking all the sheep, goats, cattle, and donkeys. These enemy hordes, coming with their livestock and tents, were as thick as locusts. They arrived on droves of camels, too numerous to count, and they stayed until the land was stripped bare. So Israel was reduced to starvation by the Midianites. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. So you may be wondering where I am right now. Up in West Rock, in what is called Judges Cave. Judges Cave. So in 1649, a bunch of British judges came together and condemned King Charles I to death for treason. When his son became king years later, King Charles II, he wanted revenge for his father's death. Some of the jury were seized and executed, others ran away and hid. Edward Whaley, William Gough, John Dixwell, all fled England and wound up in New Haven. The king sent people after them, and the three of them ended up hiding at this very spot for weeks, waiting for what seemed to be an inevitable death. It's now known as Judges Cave. And while inside, I wanted to get a feel for how the Israelites and Gideon, as we're about to learn, felt as they're hiding from all those who are coming after them. So continuing in verse 7, it says, "When they cried out to the Lord because of Midian, the Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites. He said, 'This is what the Lord, the God of Israel says, I brought you up out of slavery in Egypt. I rescued you from the Egyptians and from all whom oppressed you. I drove out your enemies and gave you their land. I told you, I am the Lord your God. You must not worship the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you now live. But you have not listened to me.' Then the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the great tree at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash of the clan of Abiezer. Gideon, son of Joash, was threshing wheat at the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites." So you have all the Israelites hiding out in the mountains, hiding in caves. You have Gideon threshing wheat in the bottom of a winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "Mighty hero." Another translation I love, it says, "Mighty warrior, the Lord is with you." The Lord is with you. "Sir," Gideon replied, "if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us?" And I think as we've been talking about the past few weeks, that's kind of the theme right now. If God is with us, why is all this happening to us? Gideon continues, "And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites. Then the Lord turned to him and said, go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you. But Lord, Gideon replied, how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest in the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family. The Lord said to him, I will be with you. Right? There's another theme we've learned about Joseph, David. I will be with you. And you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting against one man. Gideon was insecure, right? That's the big thing right here. He's insecure in not only his tribe and where he came from, but he's insecure in himself. Gideon then, he's talking to the angel of the Lord, and he wants a sign. He wants kind of proof of who he's talking to. And so he went home to get an offering for him. He cooked up a goat, some bread, essentially some soup, and brought it back to him. He was told to put it on this rock. The angel of the Lord touched it with his staff and completely consumed it with fire. So I think that was proof. Gideon now knew who he was working with. Continuing in verse 25. That night the Lord said to Gideon, take the second bull from your father's herd, the one that is 7 years old. Pull down your father's altar to Baal. Remember, it said in the beginning that the Israelites did evil in the sight of the Lord. What was the evil? The evil was they were worshiping another god. They set up this altar to Baal, this false god. And then it says, cut down the Asherah pole standing next to it. Asherah was kind of the mother of the gods. And they set up this pole pretty much to worship her. Then build an altar to the Lord your God here on this hilltop sanctuary, laying the stones carefully. Sacrifice the bull as the burnt offering on the altar, using as fuel the wood of the Asherah pole you cut down. So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord had commanded. But he did it at night because he was afraid of the other members of his household and the people of the town. Verse 28, early the next morning as the people of the town began to stir, someone discovered that the altar of Baal had been broken down and the Asherah pole beside it had been cut down. In their place a new altar had been built, and on it were the remains of the bull that had been sacrificed. The people said to each other, who did this? And after asking around and making a careful search, they learned that it was Gideon, the son of Joash. Bring out your son, the men of the town demanded to Joash. He must die for destroying the altar of Baal and for cutting down the Asherah pole. But Joash shouted to the mob that confronted him, why are you defending Baal? Will you argue his case? Whoever pleads his case will be put to death by morning. If Baal truly is a god, I love this part, let him defend himself and destroy the one who broke down his altar. From then on, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, which means let Baal defend himself, because he broke down Baal's altar. So I wanted to come into this cave, give you kind of an idea, especially knowing that hundreds of years ago, there were actual people hiding in this very cave, which it's really not necessarily a cave, it's more giant rocks piled up. But they hid here for over a month. And that's where Gideon was. He was hiding. That's where the Israelites were. The people of God, they were hiding. I'm going to go to another location. I'll be right back. All right, sorry, I had to get out of there. It was kind of tight and pretty uncomfortable to sit down in. So I'm outside of it now. But put yourself in that situation where you're hiding from somebody literally coming after you to kill you. That's where Gideon was when God came to him and said, mighty warrior, right? Mighty hero. I'm sending you. I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for you. But there were some things that needed to be dealt with first before Gideon could accomplish what God wanted him to do. And one of them was tearing down the altar of Baal, right? Destroying the false gods. If we want God to move in our lives, first we must tear down our altars, right? What are our altars? What are some altars that we have in today's world, which I believe that's going to be your first question. We're going to have a Zoom meeting on Thursday, kind of a hangout. We can play some games, just talk and chill. So make sure you come to that and listen to this. Have an answer ready for these questions. I'm going to ask 3 of them. But what are some altars that we have in today's world, right? What are some idols, some false idols that we worship today? Besides tying a bull to it like Gideon, which is not really possible, how can we tear them down? How can we get rid of and destroy the altars that so many of us worship today? Sorry, I had a spider on me. Exodus 20, verse 3 and 4, it says, "You must not have any other God before me. You must not make for yourself an idol or any kind of image of anything in the heavens or on earth or on the sea. You must not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affection for any other gods." God takes it very seriously, right? He is the only one worthy of worship. What idols do you worship besides God? What are the things that you give and devote all of your time and attention to? I'm up here in this beautiful location, West Rock, right over there. You could see, kind of overlooking the city. It's really beautiful. And, that's one of the things that is often worshiped is God's creation, right? And there's so many incredible things, I think God's nature is revealed through nature, but it's not to be worshiped. We're to worship the Creator, not the creation. But let's use this time, right? However much time we have left in this quarantine where, we're supposed to stay away from people 6 feet. Let's use this time to tear down those altars. Ask God to identify what things you're worshiping, what things you're devoting your time to that need to go, that need to be torn down. Let's continue in verse 33. It says, soon after, I'm in Judges 6, by the way. Soon afterward, the armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east formed an alliance against Israel and crossed the Jordan, camping in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. He blew a ram's horn as a call to arms, and the men of the clan of Abiezer came to him. He also sent messengers throughout Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, summoning their warriors. So he's calling for all these warriors to come because he knows he's going to battle. And all of them responded. You see, Gideon knew what he was up against. He knew he was going to war. And he got the right people on his team. He got the right people to accomplish the task at hand. We're up against a lot right now. This is unprecedented. I know you're probably sick of hearing that word. I am too. I'm sick of saying it. But we're in unprecedented times. You've never experienced anything like this. We're up against a lot. But who are we reaching out to? Who is on our team? If I had a second point, it'd be choose your friends wisely, especially at a time like this. Proverbs 12:26 says, the righteous choose their friends carefully, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. Proverbs 27:17, as iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. In order to get through this, we need each other, man. We do. We need each other. I want to challenge each of you to be the friend that you need right now, right? To be that friend first. Be that friend that others need. Be that friend that calls somebody up today, tomorrow, every single day, asking what they need prayer for. Be that friend that's calling them and starting a little Bible study, right? That's what we need right now. That's what we need. Video games are cool. They're great. But listen, that's not going to help you through this. That's not going to help you grow spiritually. Be that friend that's reaching out to others. Verse 36, it says, then Gideon said to God, if you are truly going to use me to rescue Israel as you promised, prove it to me in this way. Right? You would think, the angel of the Lord already consumed that offering, with his staff, where it just pretty much probably exploded and evaporated in thin air. But he needs more proof. He needs more proof. Listen what he does. He says, prove it to me in this way. I'll put a wool fleece on the threshing floor tonight. If the fleece is wet with dew in the morning, but the ground is dry, I will know that you're going to help me rescue Israel as you promised. And that is just what happened. When Gideon got up early the next morning, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out a whole bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, I love this, please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. Let me use the fleece for one more test. This time let the fleece remain dry while the ground around it is wet with dew. So that night God did as Gideon asked. The fleece was dry in the morning, but the ground was covered with dew. Listen, there's one thing that Gideon needed to do, is to trust God. Don't doubt his ability to use you. I believe that God has a purpose and plan for your life. I will say that till I'm blue in the face, because I truly do believe it. If you're breathing right now, God's not done with you. Don't doubt his ability to use you. We already learned how insecure Gideon was. I mean, shoot, he was hiding at the bottom of threshing wheat, hiding the grain, right? Might as well have been in this cave where all the other Israelites were. He was insecure, not only in his family, but his neighborhood, where he came from. He was insecure in himself. He was insecure in himself. And listen, we're going to have doubts, right? We're going to doubt God at times. We are. There's really no way around it. But really what we need to learn is to let our trust in him be greater than those doubts. Our trust in God must be greater than our doubts. So that's your next question. How can our trust in God be bigger than our doubts? How can we make that happen? What practical things can we do to increase our trust in God? Hey, I'm going to head to another location. We're going to continue. Hope you guys are hanging with me. Bear with me. Like I said, I'm new to this, but we're going to keep going through the story of Gideon. All right, so we're going through the story of Gideon. We learned that God came to him when he was hiding, when he was scared, when he was hopeless, and said, "Mighty warrior, I've got a plan for you." I'm kind of paraphrasing there. Gideon's like, who? You got the wrong guy, God. Do you know who I am? I'm the least of the least. I'm nobody. And he asked God to prove it to him. God does. Now here we go. Gideon, he called all his boys. He's got all the warriors with him. He's ready to go to war. We continue in chapter 7, Judges chapter 7, verse 1. It says, "So Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and his army got up early and went as far as the spring of Harod. The armies of Midian were camped north of them in the valley near the hills of Morah. The Lord said to Gideon, 'You have too many warriors.'" Right? Now, we already learned that the Midianites, it says that their numbers were too large to count. But God says, "You have too many warriors. If I let all of you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me that they've saved themselves by their own strength. Therefore, tell the people, whoever is timid or afraid may leave this mountain and go home." Pretty much had to go tell them, listen, anybody who's scared to go to battle, anybody who doesn't want to do this, go home. See ya. And get this. So 22,000 of them left. 22,000. Only 10,000 who were willing to fight remained. But the Lord told Gideon, "There are still too many. Bring them down to the spring, and I will test them to determine who will go with you and who will not." All right, let's continue in verse 5. I probably should have wore some suntan lotion. I wasn't expecting it to be this sunny. But verse 5, it says, "When Gideon took his warriors down to the water, the Lord told him, 'Divide the men into two groups. In one group, put all those who cup water in their hands and lap it up like dogs. In the other group, put all those who kneel down and drink with their mouths in the stream.'" So you have one group who kneels down, let me try not to fall in here, and puts their mouth right into the stream. And then you have the other group who cups the water and brings it to their mouth. Now, there's no way I'm drinking this water. It's probably one way to get coronavirus. But anyway, here's what happened. So God had Gideon split up all his men into two groups. The men that he had left, remember 22,000 had just left because they were scared. So now he's left with 10,000. Here we go. Only 300 of the men drank from their hands. All the others got down on their knees and drank with their mouths in the stream. The Lord told Gideon, "With these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home." So Gideon collected the provisions and ram's horns of the other warriors and sent them home. But he kept the 300 men with them. Now, it's said that the reason why he divided the groups up in that way, those who put their face right into the water let themselves vulnerable. Those who cupped it in their hands and drank it, it would be harder to come from behind and attack them. So there's one possible answer there for you. So Gideon has 300 men now. 300 men going to battle. Originally he had well over 30,000, and now he's down to 300. So he still ends up having some doubts. But God tells him, go down to the enemy's camp and listen in. What you hear is going to encourage you. So he goes down and he ends up hearing some of the men, the Midianites, talking about a dream that they had where this giant loaf of bread essentially rolled down the hill and crushed their tent. And they took that as God is going to deliver us to Gideon and his army. So Gideon sure was encouraged. What he did is he took clay jars, he took all the torches and the ram's horns, and he surrounded the camp. Right? He surrounded the camp, and on his go, everybody blew their ram's horns. There was this insanely loud noise from all around the camp. They're smashing the clay jars. It's chaos. So the enemy, the Midianites, they must have thought that there was thousands, hundreds of thousands even of men ready to attack them. And what happened is they got confused, they got scared, and they started attacking each other. They ended up killing each other, and those who were left ended up running and later on being captured. But my fourth point, and thank you guys for bearing with me with this message. The fourth point is, when we are used by God, give him the glory. You see, with Gideon, there was no question who won that battle for him. God wanted it to be completely and 100% about him. That's why he sent him to battle, to war with 300 men going against who knows how many. But that's the thing. You look at that story, you look at the outcome of that story, and you come away thinking there is a God. God was in this. And my question to you is, are people looking at your life and coming away thinking, there is a God? Look what God has done in so-and-so's life. In what way does your life reflect the glory of God? In what way does your life reflect the glory of God? In chapter 8, Judges chapter 8, verse 22, and I'm closing here, guys. It says, then the Israelites said to Gideon, be our ruler. You and your son and your grandson will be our rulers, for you have rescued us from Midian. But Gideon replied, I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. You see, Gideon realized something. I think it took him a while to get it, but he finally realized that it's not about him. It's all about God. And that's something that we have to get. We're in a tough spot right now, tough situation. But we've got to realize it's not about us. How can we be used by God in this situation, in the midst of it? You may be feeling the same thing that Gideon did right now. Your life has changed. Everything's been shaken up. Things are different. Things are not looking good right now. But how can God use you during a time like this? In order for that to happen, he's got to rule our lives. We've got to make him the leader of our lives. You know, and for a lot of us, that's not the case. So what rules over you? Or who rules over you? Let me encourage you, let the Lord rule over your life. All right, let me go through these 3 questions that we're going to talk about on Thursday, 4 p.m. during our Zoom meeting. Reach out to me if you need the meeting ID for that. The first question, what are some of the altars or false idols that we have in our lives, and how can we tear them down? Essentially, how can we take away their power in our lives? The second question, how can we make our trust in God bigger than our doubts? We talked about we're all going to have doubts. It happens to all of us. But how can we make our trust in God bigger than those doubts? And lastly, in what way does your life reflect the glory of God. Gideon's life reflected the glory of God in that last battle when he went into it with obedience, with 300 men, and came away victorious. How does your life reflect the glory of God? And if there's not a way that you could think of, let's change that. Let's change that. Well, thank you guys for joining me. On Thursday, you don't want to miss, I will be eating a tarantula. That's right, that's happening. So invite your friends, get on to that Zoom meeting Thursday, 4 p.m. I'm going to eat it. It's going to be gross. I may throw up all over. Who knows? I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be really good. Let me pray with you before we go. God, thank you so much for today, Lord. I thank you for every single team that's watching this, Lord. I pray that you would just bless them right now, God. Give them security that you gave Gideon, that you are fighting our battles, Lord. It may seem like we're coming into this alone, Lord. Help us to know that you're there with us, just as you did with Joseph, just as you did with Jacob, and just as you did with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So, God, I pray that you would just impress that on our hearts, that we're never alone. Help us to trust you, God. I pray that you would take away any doubts that we may have and help us to look to you, our leader, for guidance and direction, God. We thank you and we praise you for who you are. In Jesus' name, amen. I love you guys. See you Thursday, 4 o'clock. Peace.